Vasudeva-sutam devam Kamsa-chanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadguru. Second chapter. Please repeat the verses after me. Verses 9 and 10. I'll chant and please chant after me. Sanjay Uvacha, Sanjay Uvacha, Evam Muktva Rishikesham, Muktva Rishikesham, Gudakesha Parantapa, Gudakesha Parantapa, Nayotsya iti govindam, Nayotsya iti govindam, Uktva tushnim babhuvaha, Uktva tushnim babhuvaha, Tamuvacha rishikesha, Tamuvacha rishikesha, Prahasan iva bharata, Prahasan iva bharata, Senayor ubhayor madhye, Senayor ubhayor madhye, Vishidantam idam vachaha, Vishidantam idam vachaha. So last time we had studied it up to the 10th verse of the second chapter, where Arjuna, the 9th verse says, Sanjay is reporting all of this to the blind king Dhritarashtra, who wants to know what happened in the battlefield. So he says, the prince Arjuna said, I will not fight this war. And he sat down silently. He says to Krishna, Arjuna says to Krishna, I will not fight this war, and he sits down silently. And then the 10th verse says, to him, that means to Arjuna, who was thus sorrowful. And what a dramatic setting, in the middle of two armies, between the two armies who are about to engage in terrible battle. To that one, to the one who was sitting down sorrowing in this manner, Krishna spoke these words, as if smiling. He's not at all moved by the difficulty of the situation, the terrible anxiety that Arjuna is suffering from. Krishna is not moved by it, nor by Arjuna's arguments. As if smiling, prahasaniva means as if smiling, faint smile. And idam vachaha, he spoke, Krishna spoke these words. Which words? The words which are going to follow now. So from this onwards, from the 11th verse onwards of the second chapter, 11th verse of the second chapter, the teaching actually begins. So far is the setting, the context. Now the teaching begins from the 11th verse. These words, Krishna spoke these words means all the words. It means literally the words you find in the 11th verse. But actually it means all the verses starting from the 11th verse till the end of the Bhagavad Gita. 18th chapter. I think the last verse that Krishna spoke was 66th verse probably. The teaching ends in the 66th verse, and a few more things Krishna said after that. So 18th chapter up to that continues the teaching. Arjuna's friend, guide, playmate, for childhood friend, Krishna, he now becomes the teacher, the spiritual master. And later on, he will reveal himself as an incarnation of God. So that will happen later. So here starts the teaching. 11th verse, please repeat after me. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Ashocyananvashocastvam Ashocyananvashocastvam Pragyavadanscha bhashase Pragyavadancha bharshase Gatasun agatasuncha Gatasun agatasuncha Nanu shochanti panditaha Nanu shochanti panditaha. So the blessed Lord said, you have been sorrowing for those who should not be grieved for, and yet you are talking learned words. You speak like a pandit. The learned grieve neither for the dead nor for the living. Okay, so what does this mean? Start with the end of the verse. Often, here's a secret. In Sanskrit texts, the language is such that often it is meaningful to start with the last part of the verse. That gives you the key to the entire teaching. The last part of the verse is, the pandits do not grieve. Nanu shochanti panditaha. Who is a pandit? It's a Sanskrit word actually. And can you hear me at the back? Okay. So it's a Sanskrit word, but it's actually part of English now. Right? What does it mean in modern journalese? Pandit means like an expert in something. Correct. That's not so far from the truth. And not so far from the original meaning. The original Sanskrit meaning was a scholar. So the religious scholars in India were called pandits. But the deeper meaning is, literally a pandit is one who has panda. Now what is the word panda? If you ask most Indians, those who have heard the word immediately will relate it to a priest, a temple priest. But that's not the original meaning of the word panda. Shankaracharya in his commentary in the Gita, later on he will define the meaning of panda. He will explain, panda, the one who has panda is a pandit. But what is panda? It's not a temple priest. Panda, the word means enlightenment about the self, knowledge about the self. What am I? Who am I? The one who knows this for sure. This knowledge, this enlightenment is called panda, and the one who has got it is called a pandit. Atma Vishaya Prajna is panda. Shankaracharya defines. The knowledge, realization about oneself is panda. So not that all the pandits are enlightened. I guess the extended meaning is somebody who's enlightened, who is an expert on some particular subject is called a pandit. But the original meaning of pandit is not an expert on the Wall Street or on the results of the game or politics. Not even one who is a religious scholar. It actually means an enlightened person, the one who knows who am I or what am I. And this points to the core of the entire teaching, the central teaching of the whole Bhagavad Gita, which Krishna is going to give Arjuna here, and through Arjuna to all of us across the millennia, across the centuries and millennia. The central teaching is this: know thyself. You have to know who or what you are. That is the solution to all human problems. Why is knowing who am I the solution to all human problems? Because Vedanta traces the root cause of human suffering to ignorance about our real nature. We do not know what we are. I'm not even saying who we are. We do not know what actually we are. Not knowing this, we make a mistake. We think we are these bodies and minds. It's a natural mistake to make. The first thing we experience about ourselves is this body, is this person. We don't even question it. I am this person. What do you mean I experience this person? I am this person. No, you're not. We will see that slowly. And from that one fatal mistake, tragic mistake, the entire drama, the panorama of samsara, of human existence, trials and tribulations of life, lifetimes proceed from that. That is the analysis of Vedanta. Not only Vedanta, in fact, all the traditional systems of Indian philosophy, Vedanta, Nyaya, they all say ignorance is the root cause of our problem of samsara and knowledge is the solution. Ajnana literally ignorance, is the problem, and jnana, literally knowledge, is the solution. Yes, so Nyaya philosophy says that, the Vaisheshika philosophy says that, Sankhya philosophy certainly says that, Yoga philosophy says that, Vedanta says that, almost all, I'm using the words carefully, almost all the traditional schools of Indian philosophy, including the so-called heterodox schools, the Buddhist schools, the Jaina schools, they all say either ignorance is a central problem, or at least very close to the central problem. Yes, this much with a qualifier. Ignorance about what, and depending on that knowledge about what, will set you free. That differs from system to system. In Vedanta, which Krishna is going to teach here, the problem is ignorance about what I am. And therefore the solution will be knowledge. And therefore the one who has that knowledge, the knowledge is called Panda. Knowledge about who I am, knowledge about what I am, that knowledge is technically called Panda. And the one who has got it is a true Pandit, not just in name. That's what we are all trying to be now. So we're trying to be true Pandits then, not just in name. The whole rationale for spiritual life, why is there religion or spirituality? It lies here. The Sankhya philosophy, one of the most ancient systems of Indian philosophy, it starts, the first verse in the oldest available text of Sankhya philosophy, the Sankhya Karika, it says, why should we undertake the spiritual quest at all? Any kind of spiritual quest, why should we undertake it? It says that, afflicted by the threefold sorrow, one looks for a spiritual solution to these sorrows. Why a spiritual solution? Because no temporal solution, no earthly solution is permanent or entirely satisfactory. And Dukkhatraya, this is a Sanskrit original. And it's a very ancient text. There is, how we know it's very ancient is, a Chinese translation of this text has been dated back to 500 AD, which means 1500 years ago, this text was being translated into Chinese, and it goes much further back. So, Dukkhatraya abhigatat, afflicted by the threefold sorrow. Tad apaghatake hetu drishta sapartha chet na ekanta atyanta bhavat. Okay, it goes like this. What does it mean? Afflicted by the threefold sorrow. Who is afflicted? All of us are. You know, I don't have threefold sorrow. I never, I didn't complain. Sorrow relating to one's own body and mind. Physical pain and suffering. Mental agony and suffering. That is called one kind of sorrow. Adhyatmikam, personal, related to the self. Then sorrow related to other beings. Adibhautikam. Sorrow related to other beings. So the examples given in the original scriptures are quaint. The other beings, for example, they will say lions and tigers. Now in Manhattan, you don't have so much problem from lions and tigers. Rats maybe, yes. Somebody said there are more rats in Manhattan than there are human beings. I don't know how they calculated. But so other beings, it could be other human beings also. Your pestilential neighbor also could be a part of the problem. But so the suffering which comes from other beings, second type of suffering. Third type of suffering, adidaivikam, natural causes, heat and cold and tsunamis, hurricanes, yes, Florence. So all of these kinds of sufferings from the self, from other people, from other living beings, and from nature. So these three kinds of suffering, of course you will notice that ultimately all suffering has to be mediated through the self. It must ultimately come to the physical, the body, and the mind especially. Ultimately it must come to the mind. Then only we feel it as suffering. But anyhow, these are the three categories of suffering. By the way, That's also why we say Om Shanti 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 3 times. In all the chantings and pujas, in all rituals, you will see, in Hinduism, we will always have Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, peace, peace, peace. Why 3? Because we are praying for the cessation of 3 kinds of suffering. So these 3 kinds of suffering. I can't resist telling you this. One little boy once asked me in a school back in India, why do we say Shanti, peace, 3 times? I explained because of these 3 kinds of suffering, and that's why we need to overcome these 3 kinds of suffering. And he said, no, today we need a 4th Shanti. 4th Shanti, why? He said, mobile Shanti. You need to tell people to switch off their mobiles because... So, for this we take up a spiritual quest. Now the question will come, why a spiritual quest? For all of these problems, there are material remedies. And the ancient commentators are very entertaining. Say if you are sick, go to the doctor. Of course, with the qualifier, depending upon your healthcare, so your insurance provider, what kind you have got. Then, if you are, if you're being, the trouble from other people, go to the law enforcement. If there is a problem from nature, take shelter. So why do you need spirituality? And the answer is so profound. If you look at it, it makes a case for spirituality. Atyanta ekanta abhavat. There are 2 problems with any kind of worldly remedy to our suffering. One is, none of them are permanent. None of them are permanent. And second is, none of them are certain. None of them are certain. Permanent, that is true. You solve one problem, another problem comes. You cure one disease, it's guaranteed another disease is going to come. You solve one problem, another problem comes. Not only that, no solution to any particular problem is final. And the second problem is there is no certain solution to anything. People, we read about it. I remember reading about the son of one of India's richest families. He got a particularly virulent kind of malaria and died in one of India's best hospitals. Now, a rich person, young person, healthy person, the best of medical care, dies. And we know so many poor people in the slums, just outside that hospital, who might have got that malaria and recovers. There really is no certainty. Doctors really know that. So, because of these 2 reasons, we look for a certain permanent cure to the sufferings of the world. That was the Buddha's quest. There is suffering, dukkha. Is there an escape, a transcendence of suffering? And he found that there is. He called it nirvana. But that is the solution. That is the quest. How can we attain bliss, true happiness? How can we truly transcend suffering? That is the spiritual quest. And that is related in Vedanta. So that the same quest is related in Vedanta to knowledge. You must know what? Know who or what you really are. Knowing, does it mean reading the Gita? Then I'll be enlightened? Not necessarily. If you know the words and you don't feel it, you cannot honestly say to yourself that I am the Atman, not the body and mind. I clearly see it now. I realize it now. Until one can say that, if I just know it, if I've just read the book and know the words, it will not work. Look at the words used by Krishna. He says, Anvashochastvam pragyavadanscha bhasase. He says to Arjuna, you speak wise words and yet you suffer. Wise words means you have knowledge. You know. And you're speaking words of knowledge. And yet what is happening? You're suffering. You're obviously, you're crying here. You're in anxiety. You don't know what is to be done. you are deeply depressed, and yet you are arguing, he's giving a lot of arguments why I should not, he's giving religious arguments why I should not fight this war, and so on and so forth. So, just knowing the words, some kind of knowledge which I have, and yet it is not enlightenment or realization. What is the difference between just knowing the words and enlightenment, we will see as we go along. So that's not enough. Once we realize what we truly are, then the result of knowledge is transcendence of suffering. Nanu shochanti panditaha. The enlightened ones, the ones who know who or what they are, they transcend suffering. What do they do? What are they not sorrowful about? Gatasun agatasunshcha. They do not sorrow about those that have gone. They do not sorrow about those they do not grieve for those that are living. That might sound a little heartless. But what he is saying here is not that you will not love people, you will not be concerned for people, that you will not do things for people. He's not saying that. You will take action. Whatever needs to be done for those who are living, and those who have passed away, what prayers need to be said for them, what rituals need to be done for them, that also you will do. But this anxiety, this gnawing tension, I've seen people have come, that I'm not good enough, that I'm so unhappy. There is, tension about the job, about the family, about kids. And they might think it's natural to have this anxiety and tension. It's not. It's not. It comes out of a wrong idea about what we are and what they are. That's what Krishna is going to say. Look at Arjuna's anxiety about the relatives and those who are present here. The result of that anxiety, result of that concern for others, is not action which will do good to anybody. It results in paralysis. He doesn't know what to do. He's paralyzed into inactivity. So Krishna says here, for those who have gone and those who are here, you need not sorrow for them. Though you will do something for them, you will serve them, but one does not, the enlightened person does not sorrow for them. Knowledge. So therefore, the one takeaway from this, a central theme has been introduced here, which will go on throughout the Bhagavad Gita, and in fact all of Vedanta, that knowledge about the self is what we are looking for, which is a big thing, which is a really important point. After all, he could have said, it's not really knowledge about the self, rather it's belief in God. If you don't have belief in God, that's why you're suffering. If you have belief in God, you will not suffer. He didn't say that. Or he could have said, you are not doing the right religious rituals. That's why all these problems are there. Let me tell you what to do. And some kind of religious ritual, and that will clear up all your problems. Here, not so much. In India, even in the footpath, you will see. Some guy will be sitting, he'll set up shop, street side astrologer. So you don't go to him, but if you do go to him, he will you tell him your sorrows and your woes, and he'll say the planets are out of conjunction. Always they are somehow. And always it costs a fair bit of money to set the planets right. And so he will say, put on this kind of amulet and do this ritual, and then everything will be set right. Your sorrows will be over. They never are. They never are. But people think. Krishna doesn't say you have to do this, then your sorrows will be over. No. He doesn't say you have to believe this, then your sorrows will be over. No. He doesn't even say you have to meditate like this, your sorrows will be over. No. He says knowledge, panditaha, those who have realized who they are, they go beyond sorrow. So he points towards knowledge. Vedanta is a system of self-knowledge, knowledge about oneself. Having said that, remember, all the other practices, meditation, devotion, morals and ethics, even religious rituals, all of them have their place. All of them have their importance. And Sri Krishna will introduce them As time goes on, as the chapters, as we go ahead, here he is starting with the core teaching. That's one of the beauties of the Vedantic texts. They go straight to the point. Now, if you say, I am in suffering, please teach me, they'll straight away tell you, Tat Tvamasi, that thou art. And they look at you carefully. Did it work? No? Okay. Now starts 18 chapters. It will start. So the core teaching will be given here. He starts from the 11th verse till the 25th verse. Yes, 25th verse. From the 11th verse of the second chapter to the 25th verse, what am I? That's what he's going to talk about. Think about it this way also. In life, we have a series of problems. Time to time, problems come up. We do not know what to do. Decision making, problems in the family, problems in the job, problems in the community, health problems, physical health issues, mental health issues. So many problems keep coming up from time to time. And Arjuna also has a specific problem now in this particular battle. Remember, he's a warrior. He has fought other battles quite happily earlier. But right now he has a problem. So he has a specific problem now. But overall, there is a general problem of life. It's called the problem of samsara. Shoka, sorrow, suffering, unhappiness, lack of fulfillment in life. That is the general problem. That general problem, that overall problem, this problem of samsara, is something that is common to all of us. We don't have to fight a battle in the battlefield of Kurukshetra. That's not our problem. That's Arjuna's specific problem. Now what Krishna will do, he will go to the root of the whole thing. Why is there at all a problem? And the solution is Atma Jnana, knowledge about the self. Know the truth shall set thee free. So the truth about you, Krishna will say, it solves the problem at the root. Then the application he will show. Oh, now you want to know, once that is clear, now what shall I do in this particular context, in this battle? It will become clear to you. That he will clarify later. He will solve Arjuna's specific problem also. But the root problem of samsara, that's what we are interested in. Because we also have the same problem. Somebody said, no, I'm fairly okay. I don't really have a problem. Really? You are not thinking about life in that case. Look upon our own lives. Somebody is 20 years old, somebody 40, 60, 70, there's somebody here 95 years old. And after all these years in our life, we have been engaged in one project, overwhelming project. How to make this one happy. How to make this one fulfilled. How? Well, we think by getting these things, degrees and relationships and money and enjoyments and experiences, and so many things. We keep on adding to this one in the hope of making it happy now, right now. After 20 years of doing this, after 95 years of doing this, which one among us can claim, I've done it? It's over. I'm finally, totally, completely fulfilled. Nothing more remains to be done. Nobody. So that is the root problem of samsara, lack of fulfillment, the unhappiness in life. Is there a solution at all? Yes, there is. That's what this book is about. Proof. There is a category of people who will say yes to this question. There always has been a category of such people all throughout human history in every civilization who can say with confidence, yes, I have solved the problem of life. And there's only one such category of people. And they are what we call the enlightened ones, the saints and sages of different civilizations in different periods of time, different spiritual traditions. They truly say they are the ones who genuinely have no complaint from life. They're genuinely fulfilled and happy and wise, truly wise. Not just a genetically given happy disposition. Some people are born happy, so they're generally happy. Not that. That happiness can be overcome. Nature knows how to overcome that happiness also. Not that. So here is the verse. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, the Blessed Lord said, the enlightened ones, the truly enlightened ones, do not sorrow. They are beyond sorrow. And you speak words of wisdom, and yet you are full of sorrow. The enlightened ones do not sorrow for those who are here, nor for those who are gone. Why do they not sorrow? Why are they not unhappy? Next comes, this is a teaching about the Atman, the self. 12th verse. Natvevahang jatu nasam, natvevahang jatu nasam, natvam neme janadhipaha, natvam neme janadhipaha, nachaiva na bhavishyamaha, nachaiva na bhavishyamaha, sarve vayamatah param, sarve vayamatah param. Such a simple verse. But here is the essence of all spirituality, all religion stands and falls with this verse. What does he say? He says to the Prince Arjuna, it is not that there was a time when I was not. It's not that there was a time when you were not. Nor even was ever there a time when these assembled kings and warriors were not there. Na bhavishyama, na chaiva na bhavishyama. That means, and there will not be a time when I will not be, or you will not be, or these kings who have assembled here will not be. Negatives, you see? Hereafter, there will never be a time when we will not exist. He could have said that I always exist, or you always exist. No. He uses a negative term to strengthen it. Because our fear is not that I existed at some time, or I'll exist afterwards in some kind of world. Our fear is completely being wiped out. And he says that never was the case, never will be the case. You are immortal. Yes, you're playing at being immortal. I love that saying. We think we are human beings in search of spirituality. The truth is, we are spiritual beings having a human experience. We think that we are human beings in search of spiritual experience. The truth is, we are spiritual beings having a human experience. This is what Krishna is saying. Central truth of all religion. If there is something which survives death, then only is religion, spirituality possible. If everything is wiped out at the death of this physical body, then what's the point? What's the point? A little bit of meditation might give you some peace of mind right now, but we know we're going to die. Why get peace of mind for a mind which is going to die, which is going to go into pieces very soon? No. All of this, the truth claim in all religions of the world, you will notice, all religions of the world, they have this one truth claim, that you are immortal. You are immortal. Krishna says, nothing can destroy you. He says here that he's an incarnation of God. He has not mentioned yet that he's an incarnation. He just says that before I became an avatar, I descended as an avatar. It's not that I was not there. Before I came in this Krishna form, it is not that I did not exist, but I did. And there will be the time when this Krishna form will go away. See, even avatars, the body of the avatar dies. Buddha's body is gone, Christ's body is gone, Krishna's body is gone, Rama's body is gone, Ramakrishna's body is gone. So at a time will come, even the body of an avatar also, it disappears from human view. But it does not mean I will not be there. I will be there. So there was never a time when I was not there, and there will never be a time when I will not be there. I am eternal. Well, yeah, you're God, but not. What about me? You too, there never was a time, O Prince, when you were not there. Even before the birth of this body and the name you're called by Arjuna today, this young prince today, Even before you were born, you were there. And one day this body shall fall. Whether in this battle or afterwards, it shall die. And it's not that you will be gone. You will be there. Okay? And all of these people, all of them, he says, all these kings, there was never a time when they did not exist. But not in this body, not with these names. And there will never be a time when they will not exist. There'll never be a time when they will cease to exist, which means they will continue to exist. Yes, bodies will pass away. They are passing away each moment, continuously changing. Just one thing, this language which Krishna has used, there was never a time when I did not exist. There never will be a time when, there was never the time when you did not exist. The same language he uses a few chapters later in a different context, 4th chapter, 5th verse. He will say, O Prince, you and I and all these kings, we have had many births before this. Many times have we trodden this cycle of life and death. We have had many births, but you remember none of them. I know all of them. Mine too and all of yours. There, Krishna is revealing himself as God. Here he's just saying, there is an eternal reality, which you are and I am and all of them are. That Atman or Brahman, which we are calling it, and that exists. That always was existing, is existing, will continue to exist. In that sense, we are immortal all the time. That's the only thing that Krishna is revealing. That's the central truth. But slowly Krishna will introduce other subjects. He will introduce the question of God. He will introduce himself as an incarnation of God. And there he says, we have had many births, the same language, but I know them all. There's a difference. He makes a difference. Here he's making no difference between himself and Arjuna. I have existed always and I shall continue to exist. So will you and so will all of them. But in that chapter, he makes a distinction between himself, between man and God. Clearly, you do not remember your past births, nor do you know what will happen to you in the future. I know all of them. All that has happened to you in the past and all that is going to happen to you in the future. There's a thrilling, small but thrilling incident in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna when M, the author of the Gospel, suddenly it comes upon you without any warning. Sri Ramakrishna turns to M and says, tell me, all your past I know, and all your future too I know. Is it not so? Suddenly it comes like that. And what comes over M at that time, the author, he bows down with his hands folded and says, yes, Lord, you know. That is the difference between man and God. So here, Sri Krishna points that out. But here he says, in a purely Vedantic sense, that means here basically he's saying we are Atman. We are that existence, consciousness, bliss. Here he is revealing for the first time the nature of the Atman. What is the nature of the Atman? The first thing, it is immortal. It is eternal. It is unchanging. It is not born with the birth of the body. It does not age with the aging of the body. It does not die with the death of the body. He does not say you. He does not say it. He says, you were not born with the birth of the body. You do not age with the aging of the body. You do not die with the death of the body. Many times, bodies have come and gone. Many lives you have lived, many names you have had, but you continue. So the Atman, the first thing about the Atman is that it is immortal. The central teaching about Vedanta. Sri Ramakrishna, when he told Swami Vivekananda, there's a famous thing, that incident where he told Swami Vivekananda that he who was Rama, he who was Krishna, is in this body Ramakrishna, but not in your Vedantic sense. He told Swami Vivekananda. What is the Vedantic sense? The Vedantic sense is this one. In the Vedantic sense, we are all Brahman, whether it is Sri Ramakrishna or Krishna or Rama or Christ or Buddha or you or him or her or I. All of us are that one existence, consciousness, bliss. That's what Krishna is telling Arjuna here. That's the Vedantic sense. What's not the Vedantic sense? What's the special sense? That's what Krishna will say in the 4th chapter, 5th verse, that I know them all, you do not. That's what Sri Ramakrishna mentioned to Swami, to Narendranath, to Vivekananda. Not in your Vedantic sense, means actually you and I, there is a difference. Difference at the temporal level, at the relative level, that he is the Lord and you are a sentient being. What is a sentient being? What is the Sanskrit word for that is Jiva. Krishna says we are Atman. Then what is Arjuna? What are you or I? Right now, why are we like this? This is called Jiva. What is Jiva? Jiva is a special mixture of Atma and Anatma. Anatma means not self. The self and not self. A mixture. What has happened is that same Brahman, Satchidananda, existence, consciousness, bliss, because of Maya, not knowing its own nature, experiences a mind, thoughts, emotions, feelings, a personality. And through the mind experiences a body, and through the body and mind experiences a world. That same infinite Atman, limited through, channelized through particular bodies and minds, are particular jivas, whom we see ourselves as. These jivas, us, we go through life after life. We undertake birth with the birth of the body. We experience the aging of these bodies. We experience the destruction of bodies. We experience the getting of new bodies. We experience the person inside, the mind, the subtle body, which goes from life to life. This physical body will die. A few days later, few weeks, few months, few years later, it will die. But the subtle body, with all the impressions of past births and this birth, it goes on to other lives. In a Vedantic sense, there is a certain thing as a Sukshma Sharira, subtle body. There are other versions of this. A Buddhist will say there is no such thing as a subtle body, but it's a process, like a wave, one after another, rising and falling. That continues. But the Atman is neither the physical body nor the subtle body. Not Sthula Sharira, not Sukshma Sharira. The Atman is eternal, unchanging. The subtle body also changes, continuously changes and evolves. It will go on until enlightenment. When physical body also drops away, the subtle body also drops away, and that enlightened Jiva finally attains its infinite nature as Atman. So that is going to be the story. If you think, all this sounds suspiciously like Aparoksha Anubhuti, the non-dualistic text which we were doing earlier. Yes, the beginning, for some time it will go on like that. Krishna will sound very much like a staunch non-dualist teacher, which he is of course. But afterwards, he is going to introduce so many things. Devotion, the love of God. What is God in the whole scheme of things? The avatara, the incarnation of God. He will introduce meditation, down to the details. From the highest philosophy, existence, consciousness, bliss, down to the details, how to sit, how to breathe, how to concentrate, what to eat, exercise and sleep, all of that will come. Morals, morality and immorality, all that will come. Yes.
I have a question about infinite.
Yes.
Infinite does not mean infinite space or infinite time, is that correct? So how do we define infinite?
Yes, there's a question here. The question is about infinite. How do we define infinite? It's not, and you don't mean infinite space or infinite time. Good question. One of my favorite subjects. But I will not take too much time, but let me just tell you a little bit about it. It's a very good question because it is fashionable in such talks, especially New Age stuff and spiritual talks, to throw around words like all-pervading, infinite, beyond suffering. But it's not rhetorical. In Vedanta, we precisely mean what we say, and everything that we say has a precise meaning. So, for example, when you say infinite, let me just say a few things about it. When in Vedanta we say infinite, the word for infinite in Vedanta is ananta. Ananta means limitless, literally limitless. Now, in English word infinite has many meanings. Mathematicians talk about the infinite. Cantor was a a great mathematician, and he is well known for his work on the infinite. There is not one infinite in mathematics. There are many infinite. We have learned this in school. There are different orders of infinites. The set of natural numbers is infinite. There is no limit. You can always have plus 1, n plus 1. Set of whole numbers is infinite. The set of the fractions, real numbers between 1 and 2. There's an infinite number of fractions you can have. So there are many, many infinites in mathematics. That is not the infinite Vedanta is talking about. Poetically, you can talk about the infinitude of space, on the eternity of time. That's not what Vedanta is talking about. What is Vedanta talking about when it means infinite? There's a very precise definition of the infinite. What is that? Infinite in Vedanta means ananta, no limit. What do you mean no limit? There are three kinds of limits in Vedanta. When we talk about limits, there are three kinds of limits. Limitation in space, limitation in time, and limitation by object. What do I mean by that? I'll explain. Limitation in space means that something is located in a particular space and is not in other places. It's something very simple. You are here in this hall means very clearly you are not in the subway or you are not at home. So you are located here, you are limited to this hall, but you are not in other places. That is called limitation in space. In Sanskrit, desha parichedaha, limitation in space. Paricheda literally means cutting off. You are cut off in space. Here this much and no more than that. Now, infinite would mean desha paricheda shunyaha, not limited in space. Not limited in space. Follow this carefully. It's all almost like mathematical derivation. Not limited in space would mean what? Omnipresent. There is no space where it is not. There is no space where it is not. That's one. The second kind of limitation is limitation in time. In Sanskrit, kala paricheda. What is limitation in time? Something is, an entity is, from this period of time to this period of time. Birth, death. Created, destroyed. It could be a mosquito born at this period, within a few days it's dead. It could be a human being living for 100 years. It could be a star living for billions of years. But still they have all got limitation in time. Time of creation, time of... The Buddha put it very beautifully. He said, and starkly, all compounded things decay. That which has been put together will fall apart. That which has begun will end. All meetings end in separation. The Buddha. What a wet blanket. So, limitation in time. In fact, yesterday I was at the Rubin Museum and they asked me to speak about impermanence. What is impermanence? It's a limitation in time, beginning and end. Now suppose we are now talking about the infinite. Infinite means not limited. If something is not limited in time, then what will happen to that something? Eternal. Correct. Somebody said eternal. There is never a period of time when it is not. Do you notice what Krishna just did? He just said that you are not limited by time. Did you notice that? If you put it in technical language, what did he just say? There was never a time when I was not, or you were not, or these kings were not. There will never be a time when we will not be. There never was a time when we did not exist. There never will be a time when we will not exist. Which means, to put it in philosophical language, we are not, that entity which is not limited by time, that means there's never a period of time when that entity does not exist. That is called unlimited in time, infinite in time. Then the third one is very interesting. Not limited by object. Remember, we are talking about infinite. Infinite, no limits. One kind of limit is limit by object. What do you mean by limit by object? It's a peculiar conception. In Sanskrit, it is called vastu paricheda. Vastu paricheda means limited by object. It simply means this. A thing is itself and not anything else. So a book is a book. It's not a dog, or it's not a star, or it's not a human being. It's a book. And this book is only this book and nothing else. It's the law of identity. A is A, and therefore it is different from all not A. So you are you. If you are identical to yourself, it automatically means you are different from the trillions of other entities in this universe. True, you understand this, what it means? Simple logical fact. Limitation by object means if a thing is a particular object, and we all are particular objects right now, these bodies are, in that case, if it is particular object, it cannot be anything else, so it's different from everything else. It has the moment you have an identity apart from others, you mean that you are this and not anything else. All the other billions of entities are now separate from you. This is called limitation by object, and every object has this limitation. It has to have. Think about it. Now, what do our social security numbers do? Why aren't social security numbers common, interchangeable, same? No, they have to be unique because it has to set you apart from everybody else. So, suppose now, let me ask you this question. Suppose something does not have this limitation. If something does not have a space limitation, it is omnipresent everywhere. If something does not have a time limitation, it is eternal, beginningless, endless. If something does not have an object limitation, what will happen to it? If something has an object limitation, it is different from everything else. If something does not have an object limitation, what will happen to it? Only one, not many. Correct. All-pervading. Permanent, already we have got it, because not limited in time.
Non-dual.
Ah, yes. All right, let's put all of that together. All-pervading. What does it mean? If it is not limited by object, if it's limited by object, every other object in the universe is different from it. If it is not limited by object, no object in the universe is different from it. There is no object in the universe different from this entity, this infinite entity. No object different from the infinite entity implies no second thing apart from it. There is only one, not two. Somebody said that? That implies non-duality, Advaitam. Now, put it all together. Limitations are of three kinds. Space limitation, time limitation, object limitation. It holds true of everything in the universe. But suppose there is something which has no limitation in time, no limitation in space, no limitation by object. It will become all-pervasive. It will become eternal. It will become non-dual. Advaitam, non-dual, the only reality of the universe, one without a second. So this is the meaning of infinite in Advaita, in Vedanta. It immediately follows, in mathematics you have multiple infinites, many infinites I think. And there are orderings of infinites. In Vedanta, how many infinites can there be? One only. No second. You cannot have two infinites. You cannot have, in fact, any other thing apart from that infinite. Because if you have a second thing apart from that infinite, then it's not truly infinite. The real infinite, there can be only one non-dual infinite, and nothing in the universe can be apart from it. If it is, then this thing is not infinite. Neither are infinite then. You say, oh fine, this sounds like great philosophy, theoretical. Any practical implication? Oh yes. Such a thing exists. Such an entity, an infinite entity which is all-pervasive, eternal, and which in fact is non-dual. Nothing in this universe is different from it. Such an entity exists. What is it? Where is it? Krishna says here, what he has said in effect is, you are that. That thou art, Tattvamasi. If you would know yourself, you would realize that you are this infinite. Is it possible to know oneself like that? I actually have a talk where I just taken out one component from the talk and I given it to you. It's called Defining God. Go and look it up. It's on YouTube. It's from the Taittiriya Upanishad. The definition of Brahman. What is that ultimate reality? Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. Taittiriya Upanishad, the second chapter. The Brahman is infinite existence consciousness. Each word has to be analyzed and unpacked there. So the word infinite is unpacked. The word infinite is unpacked there. And how is it unpacked? What I just told you. A little more detail I've explained there. Then this unpacked word infinite is now applied to the terms existence and consciousness. And then the result will be, you will realize that there's such a thing is there. Infinite existence, infinite awareness, and that I am right now, right here, always have been, always will be. It naturally follows from that. And can we know it? Yes. That talk itself points out how you will know it. But Krishna will take 18 chapters to point that out. So we will go on with Krishna. I think I've run out of time. But anyway, it's good that you asked this question. It's a very important verse. It is not that in any period of time I did not exist. Look, he's denying the limitation in time here. It's not that in any period of time you did not exist or these kings did not exist. And it's not that there will be any period of time in the future when you or I or these kings will not exist. He's saying that you are eternal, all of us. Are there many eternals? You can ask. Immediately it follows. So each of us is an eternal, millions of eternal souls. But now what put together what we just read, we just discussed, the infinite can only be one. In that case, there is only one truly eternal entity. That is also non-dual and all-pervasive. It's good that you asked this question. It draws out all these implications. And you are that eternal, all-pervasive, non-dual entity. In fact, the only reality of this universe that you are. It means also, not one thing in this universe is different from you. There is no separation between you and the universe, the real you and the universe. And the even more startling claim is, you can actually see this, have an insight into this, actually see it as a living reality. That is called enlightenment, and that will easily, effortlessly take you beyond all sorrows forever. I remember, I'll end with this, standing in front of our main monastery in Belur Mutt about 15 years ago, talking about this with a young monk, a very wonderful young monk. He was a novice at that time. I still remember. It's so thrilling to hear that. I can still remember the earnestness in his voice. He says, Swami, if one just reads this and begins to understand what has been said here, after this, what complaint, what sorrow, what unhappiness? How can you complain about anything after this? Even just if you intellectually assent to it and understand it, realization, of course. But even before that, most of the, at least theoretical problems of life are solved. But it's not enough to solve the theoretical problems. Suffering is very important, this particular verse. Just this one fact. I always was and I always will be. Just one more thing here. Krishna, or I'll mention it next time, let me just give you the hint. Normally, the way I introduced it, self and not self. Atma, anatma, self and not self. But Krishna does not do that exactly. He says body and the one embodied in the body. Deha, dehi. That's a more natural way of approaching it. Why? The moment you speak about things like self, not self, already sounds philosophical. What exactly is the self? But nobody will ask what exactly is the body. Body and the one in the body. That's exactly what Krishna is saying. And that's so easy to identify and feel with. He says the bodies are perishable. The one in the body, you are imperishable, you are infinite, you are eternal. This is what he's going to demonstrate and help us to realize that. In the language of devotion, one Swammi, so this same thing, remember, knowledge, devotion, all of them, they take you to the same realization. In the language of devotion, bodies belong to the earth. You in the body, you belong to God. Bodies are earthly, you are heavenly. Remember, bodies will come and go. They are continuously changing. That was the discussion yesterday in the Rubin Museum. Impermanence. The Buddha said, Anityam, anityam, sarvam anityam. Transient, transient, all is transient. It's not just transient. If it's transient, it's all right. We say that, let the cookie be impermanent. Who wants a permanent eternal cookie anyway? It just has to last long enough for me to put it on my mouth and in my mouth and enjoy the taste, and that should be enough. But that also, I know that I am transient, I'm not eternal. But if I live for 100, 120 years, it's good enough for me. But that also Buddha says, next step, kshanikam, kshanikam, sarvam kshanikam. Momentary, momentary, all is momentary. Not even lasting for 1 year, 2 years, or 1 minute or 2 minutes. He says momentary. Moment to moment things are arising and perishing. There's a lot of philosophy behind this in Buddhism. And he doesn't stop there. We feel like saying, stop, that's already bad enough. He says, and what follows from that? Third step, deeper, you go deeper. Shunyam, shunyam, sarvam shunyam. Empty, empty, all is empty. Void, void, all is void. And therefore, putting them all together, all is transient, all is momentary, all is empty. Put them together, the result is dukkham, dukkham, sarvam dukkham. Suffering, suffering, indeed, all is suffering. So that is the first noble truth of the Buddha. It's a pessimistic. And I said, no, wet blanket? No. Heinrich Zimmer, in fact, is a well-known Indologist. He points out beautifully. He says, the philosophies of India, this or Buddhism or whatever, they are not actually pessimistic. They are all optimistic. What is pessimism? A dark picture and that's the only reality. No. Dark picture, there's darkness here. There is the veritable sun shining. There is the possibility of release, of liberation, salvation, nirvana, whatever you call it, enlightenment, eternity, that is possible. So that is the goal. I often start with a chant, not today, but in other lectures. Asatoma sadgamaya, tamasoma jyotirgamaya, mrityurmagam gamaya. From the unreal to the real. From darkness unto light. From death to immortality. That's the whole purpose of Vedanta. Unreal to real. Unreal, this body. Real, the Atman. From darkness unto light. Darkness, the ignorance, thinking that we are this body-mind. This is who we are. Light, I am the infinite Atman. From death to immortality. Follows immediately. This body, death is guaranteed. Jatasya hi dhruvo mrityu. In Bhagavad Gita will say, certain indeed is death for those who are born. But for the Atman, amritam, immortality. Absolutely. So that is the journey which we have to undertake. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Shri Ram Krishna Arpanamastu.